So welcome to Romain and to Arjan. So we would like to talk about the redefining security, liquidity, yield in institutional cash management. And so maybe I will start by asking you two to briefly introduce yourself and your role at TreasurySpring, and maybe one of you, what is TreasurySpring? So we're starting. You are Arjan, or?
Yeah, hello, good afternoon everybody, and thank you very much for having us. My name is Arjan Hess. Hey, some of you will already know us, and today is a continuation of the topic and the ongoing developments in the secured cash investment space, which is what TreasurySpring is known for, including a brand new launch yesterday of a T+1, so ultra short dated secured investment product. So in short, today we will continue the conversation around the connection between corporate treasury to the heart of the reverse tri-party repo space, the ecosystem. And this session, I'm sorry to say, but on request, this session assumes a basic understanding of, or just a bit more than a basic understanding of the secured product set. This is the ATEL Tech Day. It's redefining security, liquidity, and yield. So who are TreasurySpring? Very shortly, we provide the no hurdles access through our technology and the infrastructure directly into the heart of the secured market. And we solve for the ops and docs hurdles that corporate treasurers like yourselves would face when trying to connect to the market directly. Anyway, my colleague...
Maybe a question for you, it's always puzzling me. So could we consider that the TreasurySpring is a tech company, it's a fund manager, it's a platform, or maybe the three of them? So would you describe a TreasurySpring?
I would describe TreasurySpring as the provider of low hurdle, no hurdle access to a very complex market for which the resources are, in most corporate treasury functions, not there. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I agree. I would say TreasurySpring connects the corporate treasurer directly into the heart of the repo ecosystem, knowing that the repo market is the biggest section of money market. So directly into that plumbing. My background is in the sell side as a repo manager, so I apologize already for that if that sounds nerdy, but I think nevertheless that should be what we're going to discuss should be of interest to anybody who has free cash, structurally or sporadically, to invest in the money market, because we're going to talk of the beating heart of the repo market. Just some number very quickly from the ICMA Association, 5.5 trillion repo balances at the end of last year, about 2 trillion plus transaction daily. 55% of that is centrally cleared. So we're talking of something that's relevant. And that's centrally cleared repo. What's a CCP? What we're going to talk about? It's a big marketplace where all the market maker precisely transact. So that's where the market happens. And under the roof of the CCP, the CCP guarantees the performance, the settlement performance of this transaction. If somebody defaults, does not meet its obligation, the CCP substitutes itself. The moment you transact into the CCP, your legal counterparty is actually that CCP. And that's why it's the preferred route of regulators around the world. And it's actually mandatory. Repo clearing is actually becoming mandatory in the US from mid-27 because it takes time to prepare there. But it's already happening organically for the bank. All the interbank repo market versus government bond is centrally cleared in the US and in Europe. The regulators, the central banks show their preference, and they've developed for that, and they've developed a framework for that. And principles edicted by BIS, the central bank of central banks, and which each local regulator has put in place. So, for instance, for the one we're collaborating with Eurex, that would be BaFin because they're based in Frankfurt. And as part of that framework, they've developed a label, the label of qualifying CCP. And to earn that label, the CCP is deemed to have adequately robust risk management processes. That's the key. And sufficient capital. Once you earn that label, any banks transacted, they can put a very low risk weight on that. So that's the attraction. And I'm going to mention the name of the CCP. You're probably not going to know it, but you will know the parent company. Eurex, fully owned and operated by Deutsche Börse. Europe has another CCP, LCH ClearNet SA, fully owned and operated by London Stock Exchange Group, LSEG. In the London market, sterling market, LCH Limited, same thing. In the US, FICC, Fixed Income Clearing Corporation, belonging to DTCC, Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation. So it's really at the heart of the system. Very quickly, how does the CCP perform this magic of guaranteeing all the transaction? What is the risk management process behind that? So the risk management process is that when you transact on the CCP as a collateral giver, cash taker, so not your position, we're facilitating cash provider, collateral taker, you need to post initial margin, it's like a haircut, you need to post default fund contribution, and this is all rule-based, and you have very strict calibration criteria, and they're volatility-based. So, which means that if you've got a crisis, volatility increase, then you need to post more initial margin. From the cash provider point of view, that's very good. You're procyclically protected.
So just to pause there 1 second. So what you've just said literally is, because corporate treasurers in this room will always be cash providers, collateral takers through the infrastructure, so you don't actually take collateral, but just for the argument, they would benefit in what they now see on screen from a mutualization behind the scenes within the central counterparty. Is that correct? Did I pick that up correctly?
That's right. So maybe I think it's been put on screen. Yeah. Maybe we can go through the default waterfall very quickly. I've mentioned this initial margin. I've mentioned the default fund contribution. We're going to say where it plays a role in the default fund. Is that if a member default, the CCP guarantees the performance, so the CCP just substitutes itself to the defaulting member, but the CCP is protected, has got his cash back because he's going to liquidate the collateral received. And you're a systemic institution with all these banking member with the central bank on your back, you're very well placed to liquidate that collateral. On top of that, you've got the initial margin of defaulting member if that's not enough. If that's not enough, you've got the default fund contribution of the defaulting member. And that should be enough. But if it's not enough, you've got the skin in the game of the CCP itself, the capital. If that's not enough, they start to tap into the default fund contribution of the other surviving members, so a form of mutualized insurance scheme. If that's not enough, you've got then a bit more skin in the game, then they can call again for more, same amount from the mutualization, and then obviously there's the parental support and the capital coming from there. All of that, that's systemic, with the central bank looking at that, all the authorities very, very closely. We've never been through all these layers, obviously, but you raise a very good point. Sorry, I wanted to go through the waterfall, Arjan, is that in the access, in collaboration with Eurex that has been developed, very importantly, as a cash provider only, you are protected by that mutualization, but you're not part of it. You do not post initial margin, you do not post default fund contribution, and you exempt from that because yourself, you're cash provider only. You don't reuse the collateral, so which means this collateral sits in your account, but you can grant a lien to the CCP, so that the CCP says, that's okay, I don't need to call this guy. If he was to default, which would be weird as a cash provider, then I could access his collateral. And then else it's like normal reverse repo. If on the let's say crazy world where the CCP was to default, then normal reverse repo, you've got the collateral and you liquidate it.
Okay. One question about repo very often is, but what's in a basket? So this is through a central clearing counterparty, a QCCP, a qualifying central clearer, so even further regulated. That must have benefits. I'd like you to touch a bit on the benefits, but also a bit about the basket and why corporate treasurers, cash investors should care.
Absolutely. So the CCP model works with good quality collateral because you need something that you can price easily, always overprice, and easily liquidate. So that's the case. On that product, the GC pooling is a trademark from Eurex ECB basket. It's exactly that, i.e. it's only high quality liquid asset level 1 ECB eligible, i.e. the type of asset that are eligible to a bank liquidity buffer because they're deemed of high quality and deep liquidity, and it's the type of basket you can bring on tap to the central bank and get cash behind it. So that's why that's one aspect of the liquidity, and maybe we can talk a bit of liquidity, Arjan. So investing T+0 in that. Yes, you've got some cash, you want to invest it T+0. Just that very specific product, GC pooling ECB basket, 200 billion plus daily overnight transaction. So ramp up quickly, very easy. And then most importantly, I would imagine the ramp down. You need your 10, 200, 2 billion cash invested there back tomorrow. Though we talk of unconditional liquidity. Why is that? Because the monetization to get that cash back the following day is passive. It's the one-day reverse repo we've invested in maturing. We're not dependent on what's happening in the market. We don't need to sell a bill. We don't need to repo out a term reverse repo. That's why we talk of unconditional liquidity due to that feature. Passive monetization, the money naturally comes back and straight through back your account, unless you decide to roll, and that's another story.
Okay, so we've got security covered, liquidity you touch on, so the security, the waterfall, as well as the basket. But a liquidity perspective, redefining security, liquidity, and we'll come to yield later. The incentive I understand for banks because of the capital treatment, that's one thing, but the other side of the coin for a corporate treasurer would be they would not have a product in which there is any duration. This natural liquidity comes to the fore.
Exactly. That's what we said. One day.
Passive
So
liquidity.
Passive monetization, passive liquidity, because there's no material mismatch. We invest for one day. It comes back the following day. So that's the important point. For bank, so there's the rate cap from facing a low risk counterparty, because that's a qualifying CCP, the lowest risk rate that you can have. And then the other benefit is the CCP being the central marketplace and becoming the buyer to every seller, the seller to every buyer. It's balance sheet efficiency for the bank, and for any repo desk, balance sheet is the big resource, is the big rate cap driver. And so that's why, despite the fact the bank have got to post this initial margin, to post this default fund contribution, it's super efficient for them, and that's why the clearing price is being formed.
At what price? What do corporate treasurers expect from a passively maturing product?
That's the question. And then here, because we've said that's where the clearing price really happens, you directly have access to the wholesale market, so the best price possible, and then it's making that access frictionless, or almost frictionless, and that's what we propose, and that's why that's the type. Okay, let's be clear. You're going to extract a better yield net to yourself than on a government money market fund. Without the duration, yes, that's what we mean by unconditional liquidity. The government money market fund would invest in bills, term reverse repo, and things like that. You're probably not going to beat a prime money market fund. You cannot, with overnight reverse repo on government bonds, be it term unsecured commercial paper from banks. Yes, that would not happen.
Yeah. Understood. I think that from
it's quite important because you touched a point. So, as we have limits for, let's say, placing money in a normal deposit unsecured with a bank, the secured or guaranteed deposit could be a good way, having an easy channel, because what could be a hurdle for a lot of corporates, they say, okay, a tri-party repo, it seems to be too complicated, we need to renegotiate its time, documentation. So if you can simplify the set of documentation, you have one set at inception and that's it, and having this easy access and easy termination or liquidity with a decent return, as you explained, is great. Maybe also a question for you. In a recent conference of ATEL, we've seen that the money market funds in total are increasing over years, and especially after the COVID crisis and after the spring 23, where some banks were collapsing in the US. Is it the same for the tri-party repos? Is this a growing market all in?
Yes, it's absolutely a growing market, and it's going to take another inflection point with the mandatory clearing coming in the US. Yes, where so not only tri-party but tri-party cleared. Yes.
Yeah, that could be also something that we will consider in the future in Europe. Knowing that at the moment we are still fighting.
I think the mandatory clearing mandate is debated a lot in Europe. There's other way. There's incentivization. Yeah.
Yeah, but the two issue for Europe will be the T+1 first, and the CCP, to bring the CCPs or to bring use of European continental CCPs.
Correct, because you need to develop, and the US specifically for money market fund, they're developing a new access. In Europe with Eurex, they've already developed that new access called Select Invest, which we do leverage. Yes, we provide the last mile after that, so that actually a much broader audience can indeed access it.
Yeah. But this is really meant as an additional tool in the toolbox, and to pick up on something that Romain said, is the ability to ramp up. I mean, no one is going to look silly by being able to access a product in which 100% of your liquidity can be accessed on a T+1 day basis passively.
If you've got money market fund in your treasury policy as an accepted investment, you will want to have that because it complements it in the toolbox. The same driver, i.e. diversification away from your relationship banks, having access to T+0-ish, let's go into really T+1 liquidity, you have it, so tick, with the added benefit that you can ramp up very quickly because you dip into that liquidity, and that the ramp down, getting your money next day, is unconditional. While if you start to have a crisis, the same way you have a bank run, you have a liquidity run, that will affect anybody who's having maturity transformation. So having that enabled, then you look very smart when the crisis comes because you can quickly switch. So we think it absolutely complements very nicely that. Wherever you're done.
You're right, and money market funds are investing in similar products. So the risk is to have a concentration of, let's say, sub-investments. At the end of the day, to be surprised that you have 10 money market funds, but maybe when you sum up all their investments...
Absolutely, they invest in similar product, and then if they boost the return, there's not many ways. Either you're super efficient operationally, which is what we do to be super slim operationally, or you've got to go to the max of what your investment policy allows you. And then, is there more French risk than you would like? You choose. Is there more maturity transformation than you would want? So here, none of that.
There is one other aspect. Money market funds don't access the CCP because their regulation was written at a time when this wasn't relevant. So money market funds do not have this product set available as a tool to them, which also means that from a true diversification and decorrelation perspective, you're completely uncorrelated from money market fund risk in its widest form. Still a key part to the toolbox.
although we should be fair, money market funds are highly regulated, and we will see what, because you are based in UK, what the British will decide, because I'm sure that EU Commission will again reconsider a reform of the money market funds.
Yeah.
So that could have also an impact, because the risk for us is to lose the LVNAV, which are quite, let's say, heavily used by our members.
Yes.
60% are using LVNAVs.
Yeah.
And so the daily liquidity remained a key issue for our members.
And that's why we think it's absolutely a complement, is that when times are fine, it makes sense to be in the LVNAV, but then it's good to have the toolbox that you can easily switch. So that's why we see it's absolutely complementary.
Maybe anyone in the audience, I mean, we've been gabbling on for quite some time, but is there anyone in the audience who would like to ask us any questions, maybe? Hello.
Hello. Hi, my name is Anna. I'm coming from Arrow. So I have a question for you. I understand technology and connectivity benefits of TreasurySpring. However, why wouldn't I take my business with Eurex directly? And why would I like to involve TreasurySpring?
Thank you. No, it's a very fair question, Anna. And what we do, we provide for the last mile. So we're able to propose this product in collaboration with Eurex because Eurex has developed this access that's totally suited to corporate treasurer. So it's an absolutely fair question. To cover that last mile, I should mention that we are repo experts. It's the only thing we do. It took us the best part of a year, yes, fully focusing the legal and tech and operational. So it's so smooth because it's a bit of a complex process legally with Eurex, with Clearstream, and that's what. And then to maintain operationally, if you have the bandwidth, why not? But else it depends what's the operational bandwidth. Plus, we do it every day. So we maintain for the relation to the RFQ relationship with the banks, we quote it every day. If, for instance, you come only once a month, that may be more difficult. But that's a fair question.
I think it's time to close this session, but if you have any question, you can pass to the TreasurySpring booth or to talk to Romain or Arjan. Thanks a lot for this insightful information.